and welcome to episode 359 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, the place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. I'm Vince Hunt, and joining me as always is the creator of the webcomic Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And he once shared a bag of cheese and onion crisps with the popular 80s singer Yaz. It's Tony Esmond.
Only way is up, baby.
You know it.
And we didn't even rehearse that.
Yeah. Nope. If you don't know that song, check yourselves. Actually,
I had a funny thing for her. I always quite liked her. She looked quite tall, though, didn't she? Quite lanky.
Yeah, I think she was quite tall. I think she was about six foot, wasn't she?
Googling.
You don't remember Yaz and the only way is up?
Not really.
It was number. I do remember. It was number. It's number one on the popular.
Don't, because you know Vince is going to sing it. Don't.
I know the song.
Okay, I see. Anyway, for you and me now. Okay. Anyway, welcome to the show, everyone.
Welcome. Big one this week again.
Yeah, and the next hour and a half is just going to be full of comics, fun, and information. As we are joined by the one and only legend that is Dez Skinn.
This is one of my favourite moments on the podcast. This interview, genuinely.
Yeah,
I was a big fanboy on it. I think I overdid that, but he's
yeah. You'll all witness that. You can.
Me and Vince didn't really need to pitch in because Dez was just gold. Here's an anecdote. Here's an anecdote. And
I honestly think that Dez thought that I wasn't listening, but
because he went. Vince has woken up.
I do say nice or something. Wow, and then he goes, "Oh, you know the artwork?" So no, just the fact that you got gifted something, and he thought I'm going to run it on the cover.
Yeah,
he did test me, but I came through at the third go.
Yeah,
he was a bit disappointed.
He
was testing you.
Almost failed that one.
But we were all enraptured, and it's a real good time. So we're not going to mess about too much with the waffling this week, although expect the usual comics nonsense as always. I'm trying not to look at my screen at the moment. Normally we don't.
Why are we doing this? Why have we got our cameras on?
I don't know why we have our cameras on. We do this on Zoom, right? Well, Dan was the one that was like, "I'm going to leave my."
He
camera
said, "I'm going to leave
on."
mine on whatever. I don't care what you do. I'm turning mine off." Yeah. There you go.
But I can't. Oh, he's put his camera back on. There it is. You're getting the behind the scenes stuff.
Behind the curtain.
But the problem is when it's just the three of us. We can't have the cameras on, can we? Because we'll just put each other off.
We did for the interview, though, didn't we?
Yeah, we always do for the interviews because we're sort of, dare I say, professional in some kind of way. Although we're not professional, we don't get paid for this. But it is a cracking interview, so you'd think we're professional. But you know what else is cracking? Is absolutely champion. Some would say. It's our lovely sponsor, Comic House.
Yes.
The indie comic marketplace that loves indie comics as much as we do. And if you're listening to this show, you probably do as well. So Comic House is the place to go. If you go to the website, there's a huge selection of titles on the database. People who self-publish can list their book on there. It's another avenue to get your work out there. They also have an app, which is a brilliant place for your digital indie comics. So if you've got any digital files and you want to get it out to a whole new audience, Comic House is a great place to do it. They've got a featured section on the site and on the app, which is being added to all the time. Dan, what's on there at the moment?
Well, considering the Queen's Golden Jubilee is just around the corner, Wednesday the 6th of February. What kind of, if you're into the Royals, what kind of comics have they got on Comic House? And I found two.
Oh,
William Windsor, a very public prince, published by Marcosia. Written by our friend Rich Johnson, art by Gary Erskine, and we've got Kate Middleton, a companion comic. Kate Middleton, a very private prince. Why are you laughing?
These sound like really great Rex.
Kate Middleton, a very private princess, written again by Rich Johnson, art by Mike Collins and Owen Julians. I'm going to read the synopsis out of one of them. Which one do you rather?
Please don't.
Do either of them have like dinosaurs and flying saucers?
One's got guns in it.
What?
So, he lived in the shadow of his mother. Denied the normal life he prayed for. And when one woman began to give him just that, the world would snatch it away. See how the armed forces made a boy into a man and led him into the arms of the woman he loved. Guns, helicopters, and an engagement ring. A special edition to commemorate the royal engagement and wedding. William Windsor, a very public prince. Might be over-egging it a bit on that synopsis, I feel, Rich, but good on you.
What?
And you can read that and many other comics on Comic House.
Yes, there's lots of other comics on Comic House as well, and it's basically
some quite good ones on there as well.
Yeah, there's loads of great stuff on there. It's basically like Netflix for comics. £3 a month, you get access to that and an enormous library of digital indie comics. A lot of stuff that's been recommended recently, actually. So it's a great way to discover all that stuff and get on there now. Start your 14-day free trial and dive headfirst into that world that we talk about every week by going to comichouse.com. So there you go. That was the most dramatic reading of a comic book you've ever done, Dan.
Yeah.
Can I hope to top it in future?
Oh God, yeah. I think from now on, every week, you've got to pick one to read dramatically.
Pick out a synopsis of one of the newly updated ones or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially do it like really dramatically.
Yeah.
If the synopsis isn't that dramatic, but just put real emphasis into it.
Put real drama into it.
Yeah. You only went
good.
to the shops for a bag of chicken stuffing, but
condoms,
condoms and chicken stuffing. But now you can witness. What? Oh God! Never mind this nonsense. Let's go on to the interview. Because trust me, this is a good bit. Afterwards, it's just going to be us three again. So who wants to listen to that?
Being excited.
Yeah. So here you go, folks. Here, if you want some real comics history, then check out our interview with Dez Skinn. Okay, then. This week, we are very pleased to be joined by someone who has all the credits you could possibly imagine from the UK comics scene. Tony's probably read all of them because you read all comics.
Even I may not have read them all. Maybe. Yeah.
Warrior, Wizard and Chips, House of Hammer, Starburst, Marvel UK. The list is endless. And his latest to add to that list is Volume 1 of his autobiography, Sez Dez. Yes, it's our pleasure to welcome Dez Skinn to the show. Hello, sir.
Hey up.
Champion.
That's the spirit, yes.
Thank you for joining us all the way in sunny... Well, is it sunny? No, the weather's just turned awful in the UK now, isn't it? It was been sunny for ages.
Is there an end to that sentence?
No. There's never an end to any of my sentences.
Fucking hell, I'm clipping that.
So for those...
Sunny Brighton,
Brighton, yes.
Yeah.
In your castle. You got a castle in Brighton, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. It's got 3 gables, a turret, 3 floors, and 7 bedrooms. In fact,
bloody hell.
Funny thing about it is, I really felt I'd made it when it dawned on me I'd got more toilets in this house than rooms in the house I grew up in.
Yeah.
It's not exactly an Eagle Award, but there's something about it that made me think, oh, wonderful, you know.
Yeah, the amount of toilets in your house is a real sign of success, isn't it? Really, I think. Yeah. But before we do a whole 90 minutes about toilets in your house, for those who don't know, Dez, what is your sort of origin story in comics and how you sort of came to amass such a wonderful line of credits?
Thank you for saying that. I just wanted to work in comics from being a kid. I didn't have any beliefs that I could do anything, but it was an industry I really wanted to work in. I would have been happy if my job was putting the staples into the spine, as long as I was working in comics. I didn't think when I grow up I'm going to be a writer, an artist. I mean, I can draw, but not as well as most of the guys I know. In fact, pretty much all of the guys I know. I can write, but not as good as most of the guys I know. So my take has always been to become a catalyst. I've been a bit of a maverick, I suppose, in that I would go out on a limb and challenge IPC magazines when they were the world's biggest publishing company. And someone actually said on a Facebook page that I'd got balls of steel, which I thought was an interesting turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Heaven only knows what would shoot out of them, but never mind.
Sparks.
Sparks, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I just thought I really would love to work in comics. I made my way there through local newspapers and then just brazenly came down to London and I met Mick Angler, the guy who in the 1950s had been doing Marvel Man. He was my first comics person because he was producing a comic called Super DC, which was reprints of American stuff. And I thought, I know all about American comics. Back then, we didn't know anybody else who did. We were isolated, little pockets of closet comics fans, you know?
So you were just buying them at the newsagents as a teenager and stuff like that, were you?
Exactly, yeah. In fact, I was buying them on my way back from Doncaster newspapers, where I was employed, and I'd take a train every evening back to Goole. And I thought, I can help Mick out. You know, the whole sort of ego that comic fans have. I can help him out. I know all about DC Comics. He needs me. So I came down to London, met him, and discovered he didn't need me. He was a one-man band, basically. But he was very nice, and he said, why don't you go see Mart's Press, because they might have a job, and they're around the corner. So I went along to the publishers of TV21. And they didn't need me either. And they said, there's another one around the corner called IPC Magazines. They do more comics than anybody else. And so I just turned up there with no appointment. And I showed my fanzines. And they couldn't believe that anybody cared enough about their industry to produce fanzines. In fact, they paraded me around to the publisher, the managing editor, and said, look at this lad here. He actually produced magazines about comics. And they hired me on Whizzer and Chips.
Oh, wow. So back then it was a sort of, everyone sort of wore a suit into the office and smoked a pipe, and it was that sort of thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
I turned up in the office when I was on Buster. I turned up in the office wearing an orange T-shirt one day, and I was called into the managing director's office and given a lecture on how I was representing IPC magazines and in my dress code and an orange T-shirt with a hand-drawn Basil Wolverton illustration on it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Was not de rigueur.
Because there's a picture of you and you call them the Buster Boys in Sez Dez, isn't
right.
it? Yeah. It looks like sort of 1953 BBC offices or something like that. And they're all in suits, aren't they?
Yeah, it's so BBC. One of my colleagues, in fact, has posted on my website saying, on my Facebook page, saying about the editor, I never saw him without his pipe. When did you last see anybody with a pipe?
I know. Crack pipe. I don't know.
Crack pipe.
Lost expectations. The pipe.
Thank you for elevating the conversation. Yeah, so it was incredibly formal. It really was. And the big threat from the assistant managing editor, they had a hierarchy within a hierarchy.
One of the things I found interesting about your book, Des, is that you were, at the same time as you were working for IPC in a very sort of professional, structured role, you were also had your foot in fanzines and essentially what we call small press now. So that was at the time you were doing fantasy advertising, weren't you? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
How did that come about?
What, doing two things? Or
how did you, because I think you took over fantasy advertising, didn't you?
The guy who started it, Frank Dobson, had been a pal of mine for years. When I worked on Doncaster newspapers and I'd got free use of the phone, I used to call him up out of hours and have a chat. He was in London, and I was in Yorkshire. And pretty much the only person I could talk to about comics. This was the 1960s. A fun decade in all other respects, but comics, not so much so.
Right.
And he was producing Fantasy Advertiser. And to cut a long story short, which I rarely do, he decided to emigrate to Australia. And I think there was some government deal on at the time. You know, you get cheap land when you get out there, and who knows. But he decided to go for it. And he said to me and to a friend of mine, would we like to take it over for him and become caretakers of it, if you will? So we did. And I was only too happy to, because I was producing my own fanzines, but he had such a cool title, Fantasy Advertiser. I mean, we were all embarrassed about comics. Really, the word fantasy was much more posh.
Yeah.
We didn't like saying we collected comics, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It wasn't as cool as it is these days, was it?
It wasn't at all cool. Not at all. When I was in London, when I'd moved down here, I remember I went to a party one evening and I was having a nice conversation with this female, and she said, "What do you do for a job?" And I thought, "Oh, this is going to blow it." And I said, "Oh, I'm a journalist." I was a NUJ card carrying journalist. And she said, "Oh, really? What newspaper are you on?" And I said, "Nah, it's not a newspaper. It's a magazine." And she said, "Oh, what magazine is it?" And I said, "No, it's a young group. You wouldn't know it, youth group." And she said, "No, come on, what's it called? What's it called?" And I said, "Buster." And her face sort of dropped. Isn't that a strange expression? Face dropped. Her jaw dropped.
Yeah.
A lot of things dropped. Anyway.
I knew that's where that was going. Honestly.
It had to. She said, "So what do you do on Buster?" And I said, "Oh, I write it." I wasn't going to attempt to explain sub-editor.
Yeah.
I said, "I write it." And she said, "Oh, you do those wonderful drawings." I said, No, that's the artist." She said, "Oh, so how do you manage to fit all those words into those little speech bubbles?" I said, "No, that's the letterer." She said, "Okay, so you don't draw it, and you don't do the words. So what exactly do you do?" I said, "Do you want another drink?" I mean, it was very difficult back then to explain quite what we did.
Yeah.
Still people ask that, don't they? Yeah.
Well, try being a sub-editor and explaining that as a job. Sounds like some Devo thing, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, submarine commander.
Yeah.
The benefits of working at Fancy Advertiser, is that where you met Dave Gibbons? Is that how that happened?
Yeah, I got this artist John Hudson who was doing my covers for me, and he had a pal called Dave Gibbons from St Albans who worked in London, and he said he'd be very interested to work in comics, and so I arranged for him to come up and see me. I was at IPC then, and I remember he always used to come bounding into this open plan office and go, "Watcher!" He was always a sort of really jolly, happy.
He still says "Watcher" now, I think.
Does
I've
he?
heard him. Yeah, I've definitely heard him say it. Yeah.
I say champion, as you know. He'd always come bounding into the office. Bounding, there's a good word. Down. With one bound, Dave was free. He would bound into the office and he would show me what he'd been drawing. And he'd done a Tales of the Watcher strip. And it all ties in.
Yeah.
And he'd done this 15-page strip. And
so on the Marvel character, you mean, sort of thing. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. And
I said, "You do realise that's copyright, don't you?" There's no way I could print that in my fanzine because it's Marvel's copyright. I was very, very wary about even using Marvel characters on the cover.
Okay.
The early issues that I did, they were fantasy illustrations. They weren't cashing in on anything because I didn't want anyone to jump on me from a great height. So I said to Dave, I couldn't run it. So he went away and totally redrew it, all 15 pages. And then I said to him, this lettering's awful. A word of advice to any would-be artist, don't letter your own stuff, or at least just do it in pencil, because you're not selling yourself as a letterer. And lettering is something that can totally let down your work.
Yeah.
And in fact, I introduced him to a letterer who was an in-house one in the office, a guy called John Aldrich, who I used to go out drinking with on Friday nights, and good mate. And he explained to Dave how lettering works, and that you have to first rule lines in pencil onto what's called patch paper, sticky back paper. And you rule the lines first, so your lettering will be neat and tidy in straight lines. And Dave was gobsmacked. He didn't realise you had to do pencil lines first. And so his first job was to letter a 2-page comic strip for me. While my editor was on holiday, I decided to give this job to Dave, and it was absolutely appalling lettering. I almost got fired.
So that was on Buster, was it?
I think this was on... No, he actually drew for me on Buster. He drew,
Oh, wow.
He filled in for Joe Cahoon.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
okay.
how it's pronounced. Cahoon.
Yeah. Catch you out on it. Yeah.
From Gloucestershire. And he drew a thing called Zaga Man of Mystery for 2 or 3 weeks to give Joe a break, because it's very tough being
Oh wow, that's
an
interesting.
artist on a weekly. You know?
Now I know you've just had the first volume of your autobiography out, but I think Dave's, isn't he about to release his one as well? I think.
It's unsurprisingly, it's artwork is, but he did actually send me an email saying, "Can we swap?"
Oh great.
So we swapped.
I think I've heard this from Dave. Were you his best man, or was he your best man, or something like that? Is that right?
Well, I've not got married because I'm only 71.
Right, good idea.
So I'm too young for that.
Don't jump into it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm still looking for Miss Right.
Go look for Miss Right now.
In Brighton.
That was a sexist joke.
Yeah, well, in Brighton, I read that the ratio of heterosexual men is only 1 in 5.
All right, okay.
Okay.
So all you red-blooded blokes, get yourselves down to Brighton, because
Place to be. Yeah.
yes, enough said.
But have you discussed what you're going to talk about each other in the books? Is it sort of any discussion around that, or
No.
no? Okay, yeah, I just wondered.
No,
Yeah.
You just have to take it as it comes, Dave. Yeah, I was his best man.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think he told me that. Yeah, I couldn't remember which way it was. Yeah.
It was, and so that meant I was responsible for his stag night.
Ah, cool. Yeah. Nice one.
There were a load of his local mates and me, and I do remember I was staying at Dave's that night, and so I got him back to the house, and I let go of him to ring the front doorbell, and he just collapsed into the roses.
Oh, good man.
When his mother appeared at the door, she was horrified. But I mean, that's tradition, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And of course, getting off with his sister.
Oh, good.
At the
Good to
wedding.
know.
Tradition.
Yeah.
It's tradition.
Yeah. Can't get round
Comics. Let's talk comics.
it. Yeah. So the next thing I was going to mention is, while you were still working at Buster and IPC, I'm guessing you also ran, was it Comic Con 71? Is that right?
Yeah.
Because we have got some people who organise comic conventions who are listeners, and we just wondered how that came about. How did you find yourself in that role?
Well,
Because a lot of people wouldn't want to do it, would they?
It was great back then because there was only one convention a year.
Okay.
There were no comic marts. There was obviously no internet. The communication between fans was an annual event.
Okay.
We'd all turn up wherever it was going to be held. Having saved up our pocket money or our surplus from our work for the once-a-year opportunity to just buy comics. It was so different, it's untrue. And we didn't book hotel rooms. We'd turn up in places like Sheffield and Birmingham, and we'd watch all-night film shows. So
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't watch them; we'd fall asleep. But that was then. And the amazingly democratic thing was that suddenly somebody would say, "I'll do it next year,"
Okay.
and everyone would go, "Oh, great!" There was no rivalry or bitchiness. That was the biggest thing that I loved about the whole scene back in the 60s and 70s, that we were all guys with something in common. I'm sorry there weren't many women in there, so I keep saying guys, but whatever, sorry. And we all just wanted to achieve something. We all wanted to work in comics.
Okay.
It was a passion that drove us and bonded us, if you like. And someone would suddenly say, "Oh, I'd like to do a convention next year." So in 1970s, somebody called Sam Plum in Sheffield. We'd never heard of him before. Nobody knew who he was. But he said, "Yep, I'll do it." So we all, great, we'll go up to Sheffield. And the year after, along with the owner of Darkly Wearing Golden Eyed, the original comic shop in London, fancy shop, we organised it between us.
Oh, nice. And you got, was it Frank Bellamy was the sort of main guest of that, was it?
Well, he was a mate of mine. He'd been at my 21st birthday party with him and Nancy, his wife. And he'd done this rather wonderful cowboy illustration for me as a birthday present, something I eventually ran on the cover of Western Gunfighters.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Was that
That's
a
amazing.
wow from somewhere?
Yeah, that was a
from
wow for
Dan.
me. Yeah.
Well,
That's good, that.
Do you know it, Dan?
Yeah, I don't know, but that's
We'll be looking
a
it
great
up.
little move. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the wow anyway. I sort of donated publishing rights to it.
Okay.
Not the original, of course.
No.
Good man.
But I just thought it's just such a cool illustration. People deserve to see it. So, yeah, Frank, he was a good mate.
Oh, nice one. Now, an area I'm interested in, Des, is Mad magazine. Did you go from IPC to Mad at that point? Was that the move, or can you remember?
Yeah, of course I can remember.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I basically got fed up with IPC because it was a brilliant training ground. It really was. You get the hottest sub-editors working at IPC because you were put through hoops to get it right. Every week you would take the proofs to your boss and he'd call you up quarter an hour later and say, page 3. So you turn in your copy of proofs to page 3. You read it. You can't see anything wrong with it. And he'd sigh again and say, third bank, because they're in single banks like newspaper strips, you know.
Yeah.
So you look at the third bank of Clever Dick and his daft dog Napoleon, and you still can't spot anything. And then he'll lecture you on how far it is to Dundee, because they're the only competition to London's IPC back then.
Ah, right, okay.
If you couldn't make it there, you couldn't make it anywhere. You'd have to go to Scotland. And that was the big threat.
I've been to Dundee. I know what it's like. Yeah.
It's all right, but if you're in London in the 70s, that is a serious threat, you know.
Were there any sort of contemporaries who are still about now? And were the likes of sort of John Wagner and Pat Mills and all those guys? Were Tom Tully and did you see that?
They came later. You see, I was at IPC 70-75. It was just towards the end of that John and Pat had started boosting the girls' comics.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I was gone 2 years before 2000 AD and Battle and John Wagner taking over on Valiant.
Wow.
I'd moved on. I'd learnt where the apostrophes go. I'd learnt all of the dull details of being a sub-editor. And there was nowhere for me to go. I tried. They did say that if you come up with your own idea, you can edit it.
Okay.
So I came up with Chiller as a weekly comic with film features in to keep the budget down and to attract a bigger audience. And they just didn't like it as a weekly called Chiller and said it would be better as an annual called The Buster Book of Spooky Stories.
Okay.
Right, really.
Chiller is an amazing name. Chiller's an amazing name.
Yeah. It's got British Weekly written all over it, that one.
Hasn't it? It ends in the letter R. Have you ever thought how important that is for a British Weekly?
No.
No.
Rack your brains. I'll give you a few to start you off.
Buster.
Warrior, Buster.
Yeah.
Tiger.
Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah.
Hotspur.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always a single word title, a short, snappy single word title. So that, as I always say to would-be comics people, they should be able to read the title of your comic from across the road. Albeit it tends to be direct sale these days, but even in comic shops. My favourite big mistake was when somebody, Vertigo, came out with something called Kira Sturo. You couldn't read the title logo. Worse, you couldn't even pronounce it if you could read it.
Yeah, we like creepy and eerie. That you can see them. I can see them now. Yeah, you can see.
We do have the really long titles now, don't we? Like The House at the Edge of the Woods and stuff.
Yeah, The Nice House on the Lake and all this sort of
nonsense.
Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Not for me.
No.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a one-word title, Des. Can we quickly get back to Mad? Did you did you come back? Did you have much dealings with Gaines at all? Did you speak to him much or?
Not a lot, really.
No.
I've tended to be very lucky and be autonomous, whatever I've done, if it's licensed, whether it's Doctor Who or Hammer Films or Mad, or Tarzan.
Yeah.
Quite autonomous. I'm just left to it, which is how I like it to be.
Okay.
But we did have I was a member of a group called Society of Strip Illustration. It was all posh. It was Ron Embleton, Frank Bellamy, Don Lawrence, Martin Asbury, Brian Lewis. There were about 12 others. And we would have these monthly meetings to discuss the industry. To get drunk. We'd just all meet up in a pub. And then when the pub shut, we'd go across the road to there was a journalists club that one of us was a member of, so he would take 9 guests in. But we went to New York, is the point of the story. And Dennis Gifford, one of the gang, thought it was hilarious that I couldn't find Mad Magazine's office because we were going up to see Mad. We went out to see Joe Cubitt's school in Dover, New Jersey as well.
Oh, wow.
And Joe became a lifelong pal of mine.
Nice.
We spent New Year's Eves together. And,
wow.
He and Muriel were just great, And I got to know students, people like Steve Bissett. He was a student at the time.
Yeah.
And Rick Veitch. The gang that basically ended up doing Swamp Thing. At Joe's Academy at the time. So so Mad. There you go. We didn't really have anything to do with the American Mad. We were coming out 12 times a year.
Right, because there's
8.
That's right. They were sort of down to 8 at one point, weren't they? Yeah.
But
there's a question.
It's American publishing method that you only do 8 issues a year. It would confuse the devil out of me.
There's a story I've got to ask you about, Des. There's an interview with Gaines where he said he had a blazing row with the English editor of Mad over the release of a poster. Now, was that you or not? Can you remember that?
It certainly, I've been able to remember it if I had a blazing row with him. I mean,
right, okay.
Sort of a Father Christmas kind of figure, big and bearded.
Yeah, no, I was curious because I only read it the other day and you coming on tonight, I thought I got asked.
No, there were only 3 editors of the British Mad.
Right.
Across its life of, about 40 years or something like that?
Yeah.
And I was the middle one.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
I basically made it much more film-oriented.
Yeah, that's the question. That follows into the other question I had, Des, is you've spoken about this, is about how a lot of Mad covers were the movie, thing, but a lot of them, they weren't that eye-catching, and you commissioned covers yourself, didn't you, for some of the stuff?
Well, they do rubbish jokes. One that stands out in my mind is Alfred E. Newman as a pizza delivery boy with a stick. This thing, I think it's an American kids game with a hoop and a stick.
Yeah.
Where you use the stick to make the hoop roll down the street. Well, he was doing it with a pizza. I thought, well, that's hilarious, isn't it? That's side-splitting humour there. Off that, we've got an adaptation of The Omen, let's say, inside. Why isn't it on the cover?
Yeah.
I've always had this belief that your cover is your shop window. So you put your most eye-catching attraction from inside your shop in the window. You don't put something that you haven't got for sale. I used to think it was a cheat when Brian Bolland did covers for Doom Patrol, and it was a totally different artist.
You opened it up and it's someone else.
Yeah,
we were talking about that last week. Yeah. There's one I was comparing American and UK Mads last week actually, and there's one with the Bionic Man on the cover, and it's so much better. And the other one was some crappy joke about the sign outside a newsagents or something, But your one was amazing, so good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Who was doing that? Mort Drucker? Were you contacting?
No, I didn't. I commissioned Brits. I mean, you couldn't wait long enough for someone from an American city to send his artwork by FedEx. It just took too long.
Right.
Harry North was a friend of mine who had worked with IPC magazines, and he was working for American Mad. but he was still living in Essex. So I commissioned him straight away. And also some of the guys I'd worked with in the past, because that's what editors do. You get your team of people together who you know will deliver on time and on budget and a quality level too, and you stick with them. So Alf Saporito, who used to draw Gus Gorilla.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah.
You can't make a monkey out of Gus. Come on, boys. What was that in?
Was that Wizard? No. Whoopee?
No.
Core?
Yes!
Ah.
Got that on 3.
Yes.
You didn't know there was going to be a quiz, did you?
God, no.
So Alf Saporito did some covers for me. In fact, even Brian Lewis did. He did a Starsky and Hutch cover. That's Brian Lewis.
Oh, wow. I'm a big
House
Brian
of
Lewis
Horror.
fan.
Yeah.
Des, that stuff you did with the House of Horror, Hammer Horror thing, amazing. Some of that.
Hammer Horror thing. I'm so glad you've done it.
I know, but it's got 2 titles, didn't it? I didn't know which one he was in. Yeah. 3 titles. So there you go. Yeah.
You do a bit of Helen Keller, nobody will know. Brian had been known for doing humour stuff. He drew Tomboy when I worked on Core.
Okay.
So I was familiar with his work for humour, as well as I knew he did Jet Ace Logan. And this is one of the advantages of being a fan turned professional. You have a greater knowledge of the history.
Yeah.
Than just your working stiffs. So, in fact, Brian's agent came to me when I was doing House Hammer and said, I've got an artist who I think would be good for you, and Brian Lewis. I went, God, he's a bit dated, isn't he? Actually, because, you don't care when you're an editor.
Yeah.
I said, oh, dear. No, he's so 1950s. We're looking at the sort of Warren Spanish artists influence now. We're in the 70s, And obviously, Brian was told this because the following week, I was given this presentation, a montage that Brian had done in the style of Esteban Maroto and Pepe Gonzalez and all the rest of the Jose Chutean team of artists coming out of Barcelona. So he got the job.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
The Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires is
That's
just outstanding.
Yeah.
So good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was it like, sort of working on like the Hammer stuff? I mean, I'm a huge Hammer horror
fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge horror. So, what was that like for you, sort of working on a series like that? And
So we've only got an hour, have we? Just wanted to check. You're gonna cram 50 years of
if you say 50 years in one sentence,
Champion.
Yeah. Champion. So yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I would have evening drinks with the managing director of Hammer Films.
wow.
Oh, what, in Soho down that way? Because that's where they were based.
It was only
wasn't it?
3 doors away from where I was working.
Oh wow.
I
Okay.
was in the Columbia Warner building, and he was in. Here's a coincidence. Hammer House.
Yeah. Still says that on it. It still says it.
I
Doesn't
know
it?
it does,
Yeah.
doesn't it? And every time I'd got a new issue, I'd go around their office and give them half a dozen copies, and Michael Carreras would just open the drinks cabinet, and me, him, and Christopher Wicking, his script editor, would all just sit back and have a joke and a laugh and a drink. And I'd get invited down to the film studios as well. When they finished To the Devil a Daughter, finished being the word, it finished them off. We went to look at a rough cut in Michael's roller, in his Rolls Royce. And we got to the studios, and he said to me, look, I'm going to ask you at the end, as the only outsider here, what you thought of it. Because the crew's going to be here watching it. The actors have gone, but the crew's here. Don't tell me what you think of it. Just tell me how wonderful it was. And then in the car on the way back, you can tell me what you really thought. Fair enough. So we're in the car on the way back, and he opens this little James Bond-like drawer and gets the drinks out in the back of the Rolls Royce. And he says, come on, what do you think of it? And I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with To the Devil a Daughter, but it has a rubbish ending.
Right.
Basically, and it's not really a spoiler because nothing could spoil this. It's that bad already. Christopher Lee's the villain. And Richard Widmark's the hero, because you always have to have a token American just to get sales over that. And when Christopher Lee's built up to his going to do something really terrible, Widmark throws a stone at him, it hits him on the head, and that's the end of the film.
That's right, I remember that, yeah.
And so Michael says, come on, what do you think of it, Des? I said, I didn't understand the ending. And
Right.
Michael said,
Read about this, yeah.
neither did I. And I thought, you're a producer. You're the man responsible for it.
Yeah.
And then Christopher Wicking, script editor, sitting there with us, said, no, I didn't get it either. And I thought, what kind of industry is this?
Yeah, God.
I had 5 years being told off for running 4 dots instead of 3 at the end of a speech balloon. You guys, you create a film and you don't have any control over it. You know, you don't even know that somebody's changed the ending. Because when you got egotists like Widmark and Lee, they are going to be going, yeah, my character would possibly say that in either an English or an American accent, and just doing pink pages on the spot, you know, rewrites. And they'd lost control totally. And I just, and Michael said, what we can do? The actors have all gone. What can we do? 26-year-old coming up with a solution to a film industry problem. I never knew my place. I said, stick a quote from the Bible up. You know, that's what they do, isn't it? And lo, it came to pass, whatever. I don't know if they ever did, because I never saw it again after that run.
I'll send you a DVD.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing working with Hammer Films, because I would be introduced to people, and I was never an absolute Hammer geek.
Yeah.
My knowledge went as far as knowing that Vincent Price never did a Hammer film, and that was about it.
Okay.
And I'd be up there, and Chris, who became a great friend of mine, Chris Wicking, said, oh, Des, this is Phil Martell. And I'm like, oh, how do you do? Nice to meet you. Who's he? He does the music for Hammer Films. Oh, right. Wonderful.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I met Les Bowie, who did the special effects and had been a major name in special effects in this country for decades. And he was like your mad professor. They'd put him in a wooden hut away from the studios because they weren't sure if he'd blow anything up. And I met all of these amazing people, and I don't think I really appreciated it because I wasn't that big a fan. You know, the same with Doctor Who. I wasn't that big a fan.
Well, yeah, that's interesting as well, isn't it? Yeah.
But
I mean, did
Baker
Hammer
and I
just
went on the road together?
Who did? Sorry.
Tom Baker. Who's
Oh wow.
the chap who
Okay.
played the Doctor.
Yeah. The best Doctor.
Yeah, I was always a tomboy.
So with the Hammer House stuff, it doesn't sound like they had to okay it before you printed it. You would just take it in afterwards.
Did. What did they know about publishing? About as much as I knew about movies. And my attitude was, if you are willing to license your property to me, it isn't just for the money. It can't be. It's because you believe I can make your product shine in my industry. I can do a good job for you. And that's how licensing should work, that you never tread on the toes of a licensee. Because you don't understand their industry as well as they do. And if you do, you've not picked a very good licensee.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So you've collected the Hammer stuff, haven't you? I bought it off you.
Yeah,
that's great.
I did a very limited, below the radar collection of 300 and odd pages of it.
Yeah, I've got it here. Yeah, it's
A
great.
hefty tome.
Yeah.
And I had to scan all the pages in and clean them up because obviously, I was I think the first guy to give the originals back to artists in this country.
Right.
That's cool.
The originals back in '75.
Okay.
which is very noble, I'm sure. But if you want to do a reprint, all you've got are these really badly printed copies.
Yeah, they're having trouble, I think, at 2000 AD at the moment, aren't they? Trying to recover pages to stick them in one of these artist edition type Apex editions, they call them. Yeah.
I can imagine. Because comics were always disposable ephemera.
Yeah.
Printed on the cheapest paper possible.
Yeah.
And of course, IPC owned their own printers. And so this is why their printing was so bad, because even though you'd got web offset printers out there, they stuck with the old letterpress printers because they were part of IPC.
Okay.
So that's why things like Star-Lord was suddenly much better printed than 2000 AD, because they were at capacity with their own printers. So they had to go outside of their own printers, which meant they would obviously go to the best quality printers they could get for the job.
Yeah.
And then as soon as some time came up on their own printers' schedules, they would just drop Liverpool Web Offset or whoever it may be and take it back to Fleetway Gravesend. So something like the Eagle, for instance, in 1 week went from being a beautifully printed web offset comic with Ian Kennedy artwork on Vendetta, and then the following week it was just horribly blotchy and on toilet paper.
Yeah. And it had been in the print was a real mafia back then, wasn't it? Pre, the Wapping riots and all that sort of thing. They were quite controlling people, weren't they? I think the printers.
Incredibly.
Yeah, a lot of power. Yeah.
Well, it was all unionised.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were NUJ, they were Nat Soper and Slade and whatever. It was heavily unionised, and you had to be a member of a union to work in the industry.
Yeah, that was why the Wapping riots, because it all went computerised and all that sort of thing, didn't they? And yeah, really interesting. Yeah, we've only got you for an hour, Des. So there's a couple of other things we've desperately got to ask you about. Now, your work in film IP and stuff like Starburst and the Hammer Horror, I'm guessing, got you the job at Marvel UK, the came from the attention of Stan. Is that right?
Yeah, Stan headhunted me. Wow.
Right.
Bloody hell.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Stan, the one who came up with Sez Dez as a title. Oh, yeah. The man,
right.
by the way, who admitted I did better Tarzan calls than he did. I mean, what anecdote do you want first?
What do you just ring each other? Yeah.
I actually got him a bit drunk. Shocking, it? He headhunted me because basically Marvel UK, or no, British Marvel it was called back then.
Yep.
British Marvel, we printed all the best stuff. And by about 1978, they were reprinting Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos to a British audience.
Yeah.
It didn't stick. And their sales were plummeting. And as both Jim Shooter and I have said, Star Wars was the only thing keeping the company afloat.
Okay.
In America and in Britain.
Yeah, Star Wars Weekly was huge, wasn't it, over
Massive.
here? Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
But Marvel America tried to sell the British company off. Nobody was interested. IPC said, we'll have Star Wars Weekly, but they didn't want Spider-Man and Mighty World of Marvel, which, by the way, Stan had wanted to call The Wonderful World of Marvel, until somebody said, yeah, Disney might sue.
Yeah.
So he changed it to The Mighty World of Marvel.
Okay.
Secret Origin. That's why it was called that.
Okay.
Stan headhunted me anyway. And
did you have to go out and meet him out there and all that sort of thing? Did you?
Nah.
No.
He came over to me. He was going to be in England for a weekend. He was a member of some international Rotarian society or other.
Oh, yeah, I get you.
He was going to give a talk in Bristol.
Are they the ones who wear aprons, Des? Is that the lot? They wear aprons?
No, and the curl up one trouser leg. No,
that's the one, yeah.
Different bunch. It's a lot of weird. He was going to be in London for a weekend and then going over to Bristol. He was staying in Marble Arch, renting a car, and then driving down to Bristol because he'd never driven in Britain before. And he was an Anglophile. I mean, his wife was from Newcastle.
Yeah.
Man. And he had had a report from me on the state of Marvel, British Marvel, their position in the industry, and how they could improve it. And he obviously liked it because he invited me to join him for the weekend. So we drove down to Bristol together. That's got harrowing stories. And
oh, it's marvellous. Yeah.
I mean, he'd never seen a roundabout before. He rented the biggest car he could get, a Bentley, I think it was. I didn't drive at the time. So I was sitting next to this man who'd never driven on the left-hand side of the road before, who wanted to go down all the country lanes because they're picturesque. No motorways, didn't want to do motorways. And when he first came to a roundabout, he was like, Dez, what do we do here? And I said, pray. And by the time we got to Bristol, I was a nervous wreck. So we got into the hotel and he said, what do you want to do now? I'm not on until tomorrow at 1 in the afternoon. I said, let's go to the bar. So we went to the bar and he said, what are you having? I said, I'll have a large G&T. And he went, I don't know what that is, but I'll have one too. So we both had large G&Ts, and then we had another large G&T. And then we went off to see the place who's going to be talking the next day. We had to go through this underpass under the road. And I said to him, don't you love the acoustics in these places? You just want to sing. It's like being in the bath. And he agreed with me. He was a bit wobbly by then on his pins because he wasn't a hardened drinker, our Stan. And I said, they're great for doing Tarzan calls. And I started doing a... And so did Stan. And he went, gee, Dez, my Tarzan isn't as good as yours.
Oh, that's so good. So you got the job then?
Yep, Skin of the Apes. He basically liked my ideas in saving the company. So the first thing I did was I rebranded it Marvel UK.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I didn't want it to be considered a reprint house. You know, it wasn't.
Well, that's another thing you did, is you started original content, didn't you?
Yeah, I had ambition.
Do the Hulk stuff. Yeah.
I've always used reprints to lower the break even so I could afford to get new stuff later on. I did it with Mad.
Yeah.
New stuff, use reprints to be able to afford new stuff. I did it with British Marvel, or Marvel UK as I rebranded it, with the Marvel Revolution, which half of the existing audience hated because they should have grown out of the British Marvels by then and gone on to the American titles, but they hadn't. So when I suddenly came along and got rid of the glossy covers and made them look more like the Victor, with about 10 pictures on a page, the fans were, they were really annoyed.
And this was the fight Hulk Weekly, which was Steve Dillon. Did you get him on that?
Both of them. Sorry, I had a joke for the end of that one.
Oh, sorry.
The fans were really annoyed. Both of them.
Yeah. We'll edit that in.
Thank you. But we did get a much bigger audience by making it look like the Victor and Hotspur, because they were selling 200,000 a week, and British Marvel were doing sort of 25,000 a week.
Okay.
So the trick of the business of newsstand publishing is not to get the readers, but to get the wholesalers. If you can get the wholesalers on board, if they like what you're doing, they will order copies. And if they order copies, copies will be available to the newsagents. And if copies are available to the newsagents, people know they exist and will buy them. So all of these things we used to do back then, free gifts, when there were rare things to do, free gifts.
Yeah.
Going on tour with Tom Baker. We weren't going on tour to the audience. We were going on tour to the wholesalers. Because we wanted to convince the trade that there was money to be made here and they shouldn't miss out. That was really important. Because I've always believed you don't preach to the converted. I used to say to the team on Doctor Who Weekly, don't aim at the fans, they'll buy it anyway.
Yeah.
The trick is to get the general public interested in what you're doing. And that's something I've always strived for.
Do you think that's something we've lost a bit now, Dez, I think?
Oh, incredibly.
Yeah.
Now, because of comic shops, which I know America needed to save the industry, but now it's the law of ever diminishing returns. Because it's why they have to keep relaunching titles.
Yeah.
It's not about longevity anymore. It's about newness. And it makes me laugh when people, and this includes 2000 AD, bless them for still being there, they talk about jumping on points. Has it never occurred to these publishers it's equally a jumping off point?
Yeah, we've talked about that on here.
Yeah. If you end all your stories, people go, I don't have to buy it now.
Yeah, that's £4.50. I don't have to spend a month now that I've done it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Did I answer your question, Maddie?
You did. That was very good.
Yeah.
I don't remember my question, but I'm sure you did. That was good. And the other thing we've got to ask you about, man, is Warrior. I mean, I was a kid buying it at the local newsagents, and absolute revelation. How did that come about, Des?
Well, with Marvel UK and my trusty team, we'd turned it round. We'd made it profitable.
And this was the stuff like, did you do Daredevils and
No, that was a competitor to Warrior Daredevils.
Of course it was, yeah. Okay.
That was the Legacy of Skin. No, I did Hulk Comic, Doctor Who Weekly.
Blake 7?
No, that was a Legacy of Skin. That was
right. Okay.
Doctor Who works. Blake 7 will. No, it won't.
Yeah, it didn't long run, did it? That one. No,
it's like cinema. When all the film magazines were turning their titles into video, Marvel UK launched cinema. I thought, well, there's a bit of interesting timing. I came up with the pocketbooks.
Oh, yeah.
To recycle the material yet again, but in a highly affordable format. I very deliberately stamped their line as being cheap weeklies, more expensive monthlies, and a line of specials. They'd never heard of specials because before me, it was Larry Lieber in New York who was putting the comics together.
Yeah.
It just had a production office in London to handle the advertising and any talk to the printers.
I think David Michelini has commented that all he did was add U's to words, like colour and things like that.
I'm sure that's true. Yeah. And they'd never heard of summer specials or winter specials, and so they didn't produce them. So I started a line of specials. It was pretty obvious stuff, but it all worked. And because it worked, it became profitable. And I mean, here's an interesting aside. Marvel America used to charge Marvel Britain for the use of the name Marvel and for the reprint material at the end of every financial year. And they would be billed an amount which, surprisingly, was roughly the same as the amount of profit Marvel UK had made.
Right.
Are you starting to get the idea?
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah.
Tax implications?
Cunning accountants. Yeah.
Cunning accountants. That sounds like a euphemism for something. Anyway, that meant that Marvel UK was a separate company, right? I believe it even said limited at the end of some of the imprints. So if Marvel UK was commissioning new material, like Night Raven, that was one of mine. Who owned Night Raven?
Okay.
Not Marvel America. We weren't a subsidiary.
Gotcha. Okay.
We were a licensee who paid them money to use their material. So if we created material, who owned it?
Marvel UK?
There was a rumor going around that the reason they took so long reprinting Night Raven was they didn't know who owned it.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting. Yeah.
Little aside there.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And you got those Black Knight stories as well, haven't you?
Oh,
and I know Black Knight has started appearing is about to start appearing in the sort of movies and everything like that. So they might be. Yeah.
I never thought he was suited for Manhattan. The whole idea of a guy on a flying horse with a sword. I mean, it's not a defensive weapon, is it? Stop or I'll stab you.
They literally have him hitting people with the flat of the sword and things like that, don't they?
Yeah. That's like two-gun kids shooting guns out of outlaws' hands. Lovely stuff. But no, I just thought Black Knight, his origins rooted in Merlin.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, so is Captain Britain.
Yeah.
So let's start a Black Knight strip set in Cornwall and have him coming up against Mordred, helping Arthur in Avalon. And let's surprise our readers by having somebody who we don't know who he is and then revealing a few issues later on it's Captain Britain. I snuck him in. Just for the benefit of those who'd been with us for 5 years and remembered him from the first time round. Same thing with Marvel Man. I didn't say who he was on the cover. So it was a bit of a surprise for people. It's if it works, repeat it.
Yeah.
So good. It always
when surprises were an actual thing that existed, nothing.
The word spoiler didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
But so just about Warrior before, what? How did that come about, Dez? Man, that comic, absolutely brilliant. And the thing I always say, just before you begin, I just said it to the boys before we started, is the Yanks don't get Warrior. For a long time, you could pick it up quite cheaply, but it's got these real formative, these real sort of legendary characters in it. But because it's not in a monthly comic, the Americans weren't getting it, And
it's not in colour.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, did anybody like what they did to V for Vendetta?
No. It didn't suit colour, did it?
It's designed.
It wasn't drawn for colour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did it start? Well, I'd enjoyed my time at Marvel UK, but I felt it had run its course. I'd done what I set out to do, which was to make it profitable for America, to save the company, and I'd played in Stan's sandbox. Now I wanted my own.
Okay.
For a man who started out thinking I'll be happy just to put the staples in comics, I started setting my sights a little bit higher, I think. So I just said to my team, let's do it again, but do it for ourselves. So instead of having Captain Britain, we'll have Marvel Man.
Okay.
Instead of having Absalom Dark Dalek Slayer, who we came up with for Doctor Who Weekly, another interesting one about who owns the copyright.
Well, and it was also in an episode of the TV series, briefly on the screen, wasn't he? Yeah.
Oh, they were all fans. They grew up on that. Yeah. It was lovely, really, when you
such a great character as well.
Yeah. And he was basically, my brief to the writer and artist was, it's Conan in space, drunk.
Yes.
That was it. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre had just come out, and so we thought it'd be funny to give him
something for the kids.
Sword.
Yeah.
Something for the kids. Never write down to your audience is something else that I believe.
Yeah.
Which was more than apparent with Warrior. But equally, don't be clever. Don't go over their heads. Don't lose your audience. Don't come up with a title like Kira Sturo.
Yeah.
You're just trying to be clever, aren't you? That's what you're trying to do. Trying to impress someone. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
So and I just basically either brought back characters that I could, like Father Shandor, House of Hammer, or created versions of characters we'd already done. So the most obvious of all, of course, is the Vendetta, which was Night Raven.
Yeah.
Night Raven, for those who don't know, was in Hulk comic, and he was an enigmatic vigilante whose face you never saw, who wore a mask and had on his chest a symbol that was a dramatized raven with two wings pointing out, coming down to the body in a circle. So it was basically the same as a V.
Okay.
And
he was very pulpy as well, wasn't he, Night Raven, for me?
Oh, it was set in the 30s. I basically was wanting to get the atmosphere of the Shadow and the Spider and G9 and his battle aces and all that kind of stuff. G8 and his battle aces. And I said to Steve Barkhouse, the writer, who I'd worked with at IPC, he was part of the gang, I said, let's get this film noir kind of ambience to it in 3 pages. And he came up with a line for the first one that said "Night in the City," and I thought that's quite good, but I think "Night Time in the City" has got a better ring to it, and so we'd start every strip with "Night Time in the City," little 3-page strip, and then end it with "Night Time in the City." It was a gimmick, but it worked.
Yeah.
And I just thought I'd enjoyed working on that so much. I had a secret origin worked out with the character that I never got around to revealing, but I said, let's do Night Raven again to David Lloyd. But let's set it in the future instead of the past so we don't get sued. And he said, well, there's a guy I've worked with on some of the backup strips in Doctor Who Weekly after you left, called Alan Moore. Can he have a go at writing it? And I said, yeah, why not? I mean, if he's willing to work on spec, as in, if I don't like it, I don't pay you.
Okay.
I'm willing to look at his work. So that's how Alan Moore got to write it. Although he was, as maybe famously known by now, wanting to call it the Ace of Shades.
Okay.
Well, I was never a Lemmy fan, so I didn't even like the joke the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
And I hate things which have got gimmicky titles, because the first half a dozen times you smile and then you get bored by it.
Yeah.
Okay.
A friend of mine had a shop down here in Brighton, comic shop, and he called it Reservoir Frogs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think I heard a titter from the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of
Yeah.
a weird one there.
Yeah.
So I didn't like Ace of Shades, but something else as an editor you'll learn very quickly is don't diss anything unless you've got a better idea. Because where does it leave you?
Yeah.
Okay.
You've just told the writer you think it's a crap idea. You haven't given him a better one, and you've got pages to fill. So what do you do? You know. So I spent 2 or 3 weeks ruminating, and I eventually thought, Vendetta's a great word. It's not been done. Most words seemingly have been done. Anything I could think of, already done it. I mean, half the names are in the Legion of Superheroes, you know.
Yeah.
There was very little left. And I thought, Vendetta's a great word. It's so dramatic. A little bit Italian for a guy who's meant to be British.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly remembered Churchill's V for Victory in World War II. And I thought, V for Vendetta. It's no longer aiming at a victory. It's against a totalitarian future government, let's call it that. So that was basically what I gave to Alan Moore, and he ran with it in an amazing manner. I'd hate to think what he would have done had we not got the letter V.
Yeah.
Yeah, God.
I mean, Ace can only go so far.
So bear in mind you were working with a lot of big characters, albeit early in their career back then. You know, Alan Davis as well, Gary Leach.
Steve Dillon.
Yeah. What was your sort of policy of how you guided them or how you edited them? If you must have you must have repeated or got this sort of philosophy about how you dealt with creatives, I suppose.
I like to call it Yorkshire subtlety. Tact, what's that? In fact, John Bolton one time he said to me, you never say anything nice about my work. No, you never compliment my work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, John, I give you the biggest compliment I possibly can. Said, what's that? I print it.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Yeah.
Creators have the habit of believing their own press releases too much often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they forget we're all doing a job to entertain an audience, not to entertain ourselves or our family or our next door neighbors. Don't give me anybody who says, I write it for people like me. There is nobody like you. You are unique, whoever you are. And you will get a free copy anyway.
Yeah.
Write it for an audience that wouldn't automatically want to read it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Then you're growing a market.
Yeah.
This is gold, Des, and I think maybe we'll call this part one if you don't mind. But
okay.
I think to be
Volume
fair to you,
one, volume one, like his autobiography. Yeah.
we did invite you on because we talked about your new autobiography recently, and it is brilliant, and it's absolutely full of, like you say, anecdotes, but also full of some great photographs and early Dave Gibbons art, and all this sort of thing in there. Why did you come about at this point to write it? What sort of, was it a bit of lockdown fever, or what happened?
Sort of. I'm in this weird position where anything I'd want to do, I've pretty much done.
Right. Okay.
And I've been doing this giant wrap up over the last few years. Oh God, this is going to be such a morbid ending. I produced 2 issues of Monster Mag that I'd promised I would do in 1975.
Right.
I produced the final issue of Volume 2 of House of Hammer. I did the collected House of Hammer. I've done all these things in the last couple of years, and it was sort of like rounding off my career. You know, stuff that we hadn't sold, because that's why you never see any Collected Warrior, because we sold the properties off, or the creators fell out with each other, or died. I mean, it's quite tragic. I look back at Starburst. All of my contributors now are dead except for 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Whoa! Remind you of your own mortality. So I've spent the last few years just doing the things that I'd always promised and never got round to. Volume binders, stuff that I can do easily. I'm no longer interested, sadly, in going out through W.H. Smith's, because they have become pretty much monopolistic, and they've forgotten that their job is to be thankful to publishers for producing things they can make money out of.
You've almost got to pay them to get your book on the shelves these days.
You do have to. They become landlords. What they do is they divide their shop up into square millimeters, whatever, and then they bill publishers for the amount of space they're going to take on the shelves.
Right.
The flaw in that, to anyone with half a brain, is, so why do they bother sell anything? They're making money before they've even put it on the shelves. And the answer is correct.
Yeah.
They don't give you your unsolds back anymore.
Yeah.
They charge you for the privilege of appearing on their shelves. I mean, it's outrageous.
Yeah.
And they say if you want your stuff to really sell, you should pay for a bin end where you have full cover display, as opposed to just 1 inch of the cover showing.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's so wrong. And they don't want maverick publishers. They want to be able to do 1 bill to a mega publisher. The paperwork, if they're dealing with all these little indies, is just going to be astronomical, and they don't want that. So they've blown us out in the same way Diamond has. Oh, there's a punchline to end on.
But the other thing I noticed it's just volume 1, isn't it, of your autobiography? And you did promise me in a message, which I've saved, that you will be doing volume 2. Yeah. But there's the wealth of photographs and stuff in there, Des. Do you store all this stuff? Do you keep it away, or did you have to go to people and say, do you remember that time we were all in the office, and did you have to do a bit of that? Or
I'm a hoarder.
Right.
Aren't we all?
Comics,
Do we throw anything away?
Nope.
Nope. I only yesterday threw away 2 speakers for my desktop computer, and they hadn't worked for about 2 years. They just sat there gathering dust. I mean, we hoard stuff. I've never had a camera, but people have often given me photographs that they've taken, and I've kept them. Yeah. So
nice.
And I guess it's going to be about 4 volumes altogether, because volume 2 is going to cover House of Hammer, Monster Mag, Mad, Tarzan, Laurel and Hardy, all the stuff I did for Warner Brothers, and possibly the launch of Starburst. Volume 3 will be Marvel UK. So that will mean Volume 4 will be Warrior. So
brilliant.
There's a way to go. And then, of course, I'm going to put all 4 together into one giant book, which I shouldn't have said, because nobody will buy the individual part.
No. We buy multiple copies. You know that from Marvel UK. So, where can people get it? Because you have to. I think I had to PayPal you, didn't I? Is that right?
Yeah, you either PayPal or crikey, I take postal orders. I've had a few people say, "Can I send it by bank transfer? I don't do PayPal." And I say, "Yeah, of course you can. That way, I don't pay a fee to PayPal." I'm all for that. But it has to be from me personally. So the best route is to really go on my Facebook page, which is surprisingly called Dez Skinn. And you'll see it gives you all the details on there. So
it's just an email you need to put in, don't you? That's the way I did it. And you can get it autographed as well, can't you? I think if you leave a note on your PayPal.
No extra charge. I mean, I remember with Warrior, it used to be that the rare ones were the ones that none of us had signed.
It's like a Colin Baker autograph photograph. Yeah, everyone's got one.
We're obviously saving Doctor Who for next time, are we?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, we used to do comic marts all the time, all of us. And when there's about a dozen of you all together, there's always going to be someone turning up at one comic mart or another and scrawling on the covers of copies.
Yeah, I saw the original to I think it was the summer special or something at an exhibition in Peterborough the other day. It's like a Steve Dillon exhibition.
Wow.
You know, the one where they're all sort of running towards the camera, all different characters.
Steve lived in my house at the time, and I remember
distinctly
us sitting there and me getting out all the copies I had of Justice League of America to see how the Americans went about doing group covers.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, one of the things I remember saying to Steve was the horizon should be at an angle. It's much more dramatic, irrespective of whether the characters are standing upright or not, of having a horizon at an angle. And we were very strongly influenced by Americana because you don't turn your back on the past. The beautiful thing about comics is you learn from the history of it. I don't think there's a single artist out there who wasn't influenced by another artist who'd worked there years before. You didn't have to meet them. You just buy a comic by Gil Kane or Will Eisner or whoever your favourite is,
Oh, I think we need to remember that. They call it corporate memory, don't we? It's a silly term, but I think we need to remember the history of comics. There's so many people coming up in it who don't know anything about comics.
Scary. Yeah. Blind leading the blind.
Yeah. So what else you got on the plate at the moment? Des, you got anything else sort of planned or available to buy?
To buy.
I know you got a very busy eBay shop, haven't you? Which I bought a number of things from. So yeah.
I'm actually thinking that I've got so much clutter, I'm going to give it away. So I'm intending to put on my Facebook page. Anybody interested in Roy of the Rovers? Because I've got pretty much a full set. Victor, Tiger, Battle. I just want to clear them out of the house, because there does come a time when you say, what will my daughter do with all this stuff that she's going to inherit? Isn't this a fear we all have?
Yeah, there's a long-running joke that I will die by it falling on me. Yeah, so we all need to be careful, don't we? Yeah.
Oh, that was a bit downbeat, wasn't
it? Don't worry, he'll die happy. Yeah. That's how he wants to go. That's how he wants to go. Yeah.
I might be naked, Des.
You've woken Vince up.
I have just been I've just been sat back, just go. I can't wait. I can't wait to get another history lesson. Next time you're on.
We're getting you back on to talk about Doctor Who and Warrior. I'll tell you that now. Definitely. Yeah, without a doubt.
On Doctor Who, I've got quite a few stories.
Oh, yeah. Those days of all the Dave Gibbons and the Pat Mills and John Wagner and Mike McMahon and all those strips, just so good. Just amazing stuff. We'll definitely get you back on.
16-year-old Steve Dillon.
Yeah.
That's a standard unbeatable.
Yeah. I remember thinking Laser Eraser and Press Button were a bit saucy in the day, Des. And he was probably about the same age as me. Yeah.
No, Zerk was the saucy.
That was very strange, wasn't it?
A very quick little, slightly more upbeat story than some of those others. Laser Eraser and Press Button, the influence of an editor. What does an editor do? Well, I've always said what an editor does is you start the ball rolling. You get the right people for the job. You get them going in the right direction, because left alone, an artist might want to draw cowboys.
Yeah.
But there might not be an audience for cowboys. So you're like the captain of the ship and you've got this fabulously talented crew, but they don't necessarily know whether they're going to the Bahamas or China. But you know where the tourists want to go. Tourists, aka readers, because you're in touch with them. You're not working in your garret. You're actually out there. You read the letters from them. You know what they want. So you direct the writers and the artists, in a commercial direction, because you're the one whose neck's on the line. Theirs isn't.
Yeah.
If they draw a Western, everyone will go, oh, isn't this beautiful artwork? Let's employ him. The editor sinks with the ship. You are the captain. I'm keeping this metaphor running. So
you could say that the editor has skin in the game. There you go. There's my pun of the week.
Well, thanks for that.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
On that bombshell.
Unbelievable.
The audience will be in stitches. Do we?
No, they won't. No, they won't. Trust me, they won't.
Des, do you want to give your email out for the PayPal on here, or would you rather people just went to your Facebook?
People can go to my Facebook page, but I'll do it. But I don't expect anyone to easily write it down when they can just go to my Facebook.
I will put it on the Slack as well.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes.
My absurdly spelt name, which is one for next time, with the number 1 after it, because there are, after all, thousands of people called Dez Skinn, aren't there? So it's Dez Skinn 1 at yahoo.co.uk.
Well, we normally say we've only sort of skimmed the top of the iceberg when it comes, but we really have in terms of this conversation. And like, seriously, listeners, like, get hold of this book. Find the link, get hold of the book, and Are
you doing any events, Dez, coming up that we could? Are you doing any comic conventions or anything?
I've stopped doing the Comic Cons because, quite honestly, they've become incredibly sort of feudal and bitchy, and I think it's quite tragic the way that industry has become polarized, shall we say.
I think I last saw you at Kapow, I think I saw you at that one, Mark Miller's Kapow. You remember that one in Islington?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah. I'm humouring you. Yeah. The guy who came over to me and said, I really liked Warrior, weren't you? Yes.
That was me.
Yeah, I remember you. You're the only one who's ever done that.
Stuff.
If you'd ask a question, I tend now to do the film events much more, because I don't know, they remind me of what it used to be like in the 70s in the comics events. They're much more united brotherhood.
Yeah, I half expected you to see it at that dark, the Dark Side magazine. I half expected to see you at that event. Actually.
I was there.
Oh, were you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I did the first one, but it was only a one-day event.
Yeah.
I prefer things like SFW, which is Sci-Fi Weekender, where it's a 4-day event, and it's worth travelling to Great Yarmouth for. There's not a lot of good reasons to go to Great Yarmouth.
No, there's not, is there? No.
A 4-day event is a good enough reason. So I do those kind of sci-fi shows.
Oh, cool.
Because that's what I'm producing. I'm producing horror and sci-fi magazines. So
yeah. Brilliant.
And long may it continue.
Cheers, Dez.
You've been
get a copy.
That's a great legend this week, Dez. So this is volume 1, listeners.
Yeah.
Get ready, because there will be more.
Buy them all.
There you go. Another cracking
How good
interview,
was that?
full of history, knowledge, and I love that. I love those interviews when we talk to real sort of legends and sort of titans in the industry. I like to just sit back.
There's stuff to learn there for people talking about editing and this sort of thing. Yeah, there's a lot that people could. And he's right when he says people need to know about comics to be able to make them. Yeah. I don't think it seems like a completely uncontroversial thing to say, but I'm sure somebody would kick off about it, won't they?
Yeah. And you're not just writing for you. You're writing for an audience
to sell the comics.
Yeah, like we say here, obviously you want to write the comics you want to write and make, but if you're putting product out into the world, then you're looking for an audience. So know what your audience is and go for it.
Yeah,
and that way you got no one to blame for yourself when it goes horribly wrong.
You probably won't blame yourself. You probably blame someone else.
Yeah,
I don't know, the government or someone.
Yeah.
Life's a lot easier if you always blame someone else.
Yeah. I always blame Dan.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Me too.
I can shoulder those.
Yeah.
Concerns.
I just need to make sure you don't have a strong alibi for those nights. Anyway,
he's doing something himself.
This is a criminally good podcast this week. And it's time for some shout-outs. Have we got any shout-outs, gents?
May we? So sign up for Edison Neo's No Brainer 4. It's ready to go on Kickstarter. It's one of those sort of landing pages. You can go and be notified when it goes live. There is a comic out called Charlie and Remy Picture Show. It's one of those pay as much as you like downloadable comics. You know, you can go onto the site and pay as much as you like for a comic, and this is about people pitching a comic to, let's say, a Netflix-style company. Looks fun. And one of the creators came on the Drink and Draw the other day, and we had a chuckle with him. And it's the website is Jonacious, which is JERNACIOUS, Jonacious.itch.itch.i. I don't know what websites do. I don't know how they work, but that's what you should be going to. And you can pay from those ones. You can get it quite cheaply, I think. Next up, congratulations to That Comic Smell on their 100th episode. Well done, guys.
Hey,
nice work. Fellas. Just
stuff.
In the middle of listening to it now, we get a little nice shout out. It's very kind of them. And a mention of the 200th. From a personal point of view, it's the Tribute World Tour upcoming in June. If you're at TCAF in Toronto or Heroes in Charlotte, come and find me and Adam. At TCAF, I shall be getting cups of tea and helping out at the No Brow stall. And at Heroes, myself and Adam will be in Artist Avenue at our own Artist Alley, not Avenue, Artist Alley in our own table. So come and say hello, and we've got a new book. Hopefully, I'm going to be ready to go. It's just me and Adam doing some work to get out. So we wanted some new products for the convention. Another Kickstarter is Battle Panda 1, Big Trouble in Panda City. It's now live on Kickstarter. It's about halfway funded at the moment. It's from our writer, Farhan Qureshi, and art is by Carlos Angeli, colours by Joaquin Pereira, letters Rob Jones. It's Anthropomorphic Panda Warrior comic. It looks a whole heap of fun. So go and back that one. Battle Panda issue 1. They're my ones. There you
go. Nice. Dan, got any?
No, I don't have any shout outs this week. I feel like I have some, but I can't recall them.
Yeah,
so,
as always. Well, I can recall that, of course, Lawless is just around the corner. May the 28th and 29th of this year at the Double Hill Tree by Hilton Hotel in Bristol. Tickets for the Saturday tickets are sold out. Weekend and Sunday tickets are still available. No tickets are available on the door, so go to lawlesscomiccon.co.uk to find out more. Obviously all those people that bought Saturday tickets might bump into us.
Yeah, hopefully we're going to be there on the Saturday doing a bit of, we've got press passes, haven't we? It's going to be good. Yeah,
we're legit. No, I couldn't.
I think because we had Sue on the podcast, so we got press passes. It's
I
think.
Yes, so I look forward to seeing you there. Now, do we want to recommend some comics? I don't have a recommendation this week, so I'm just going to sit back and add to my wish lists whatever the chaps are going to recommend. So take it away, guys.
I've got two, and my first one is little more than a shout out, really, because it's more of an art book. So during Manga Month, which we very much enjoyed, and we all sort of stuck our noses into manga and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think you read this, Vince, but I know me and Dan read Onwards Towards Our Noble Deaths by Shigeru Mizuki, who immediately became one of my favourite creators. I absolutely loved it. So out this week, it's a French book. But it's now for sale. You can get it through Gosh. They got a load through because it's mostly wordless. It's a book called Monanoke, and it's if you recall when we talked about Mizuki, he's kind of the god of yokai in manga and anime, really. And what it does is each page is a different representation of a different sort of folk creature, folk tale. There's these sort of strange tales that he travelled about the country collecting, and it is the most beautiful thing in the world. I've shared some of the images on the Slack, and with you guys, I was just showing you before we started. Honestly, it's the most beautiful book. It's about 40 quid, but it is a lovely landscape style art book. If you're anyway into this dude, I suggest an investment. When I got there, I was speaking to Andrew on the counter, and I said, "Oh, where's this?" And he went, "Oh, that's just reminded me. I need to grab one myself before they run out." So you need to get on it before they run out. And they've imported a load from France, so you're not going to get a cheaper one. Do you see what I mean? And go to that. So Shigeru Mizuki, Monanoke. It's about 40 quid, but absolutely worth it. Just gorgeous. There you go. That's my first one.
Nice. Dan.
Lovely stuff. I've got two relatively quick ones. One, we got contacted by people doing I think it's a licensed Half-Life comic.
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
You have to follow up on this because I've read the first 4 that they've sent over, and it's really good. I really enjoy it. I've played the Half-Life games, and this feels like it's written in the same voice and the same continuing story. And so I think I'm going to chunk through the rest of it before kind of giving a final kind of recommendation or review on it. But I've really enjoyed it so far. It's really good. So that's one sort of pigeonholed. The next one was a G.I. Joe comic, the 40th anniversary special. And I was complaining about a company said that they were going to get this and they didn't. I've still not got over that. But I managed to get one through. It got scalped on eBay. It got bent over a little bit. But essentially, it's like I think it's G.I. Joe issue 21. They did like a silent.
Yeah, the famous silent issue,
one.
isn't it? Yeah.
And they've got a bunch of artists essentially to do like redraws of the project. And there's some really interesting thumbnails at the back. Some of them like have pushed it a bit and it looks really good. Others have kind of just almost just redrawn the exact same thing. And I was like, well, I'd maybe reimagine it a bit more than that, just push the layout a bit more. But it's an interesting little experiment. I was thinking maybe like something we could do in the Slap group, if we took a comic and then like all tried to redraw a comic in our own style from page to page and then put it out as like a PDF. I thought that might be a nice idea. That's another idea I never get around to actually implementing and stuff. But
you're in charge now.
Yeah, but if someone wants to do that, I'd happily take part. But yeah, it was an interesting little art project. I think there's a page that Liefeld absolutely brutalizes. He does his usual dialing it in while collecting the money kind of thing. But apart from that, the rest of them do a good job. Yeah. So I would have thought they were going to give him a page with no feet in it, and they gave him a page with feet in it, and he murdered it. You've had your own feet for over 40 years, Rob. How can you not draw them?
Very salty this week, isn't it?
Yeah. I was finding it frustrating, man, when like there's people in our Slack group and people we know who could fucking bury that under, like that was so ridiculously talented.
Yeah.
Oh well, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
And Tony, what's your next one?
My last one is Dogs of London issue 1 from Aftershock Comics, which I've been looking forward to actually. It's written by Pete Milligan, and I was sort of scanning through some Pete Milligan books that I've read recently, and it occurred to me that he's a creator who we recommend quite regularly on this show. Actually, I'm a big fan of his. I remember talking to, who did we talk to about him? So Joe suggested we might be able to get him on, which I think would be great. He's a great thinker, Pete Milligan. He always comes up with some great. His writing has got depth to it, I think. You know, art is by somebody called Arta Cedar, colors by Valentina Bianconi, letters by Rob Steen, and there's a variant cover, which is the one I got, which is by close friend of the show, Dave Johnson. I'm a sucker for London-based crime stories in any medium, really, be it movies or whatever, novels, stuff like that. So when I saw the previews for this, I immediately started reposting them and said, I'm really looking forward to this. It does, I think, like a lot of Aftershock books. What's the one about the Ark? Dark Ark. That's one we liked before, wasn't it? That's an Aftershock book. Yeah. They have a sort of almost like a Vertigo feel to them, a lot of these books to me.
Yeah, like Baby Teeth was another one there.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. And which is no bad, you know, it's no small compliment for me. Milligan's also one of my writers who I tried to pick up regularly, and he has bumped around a few companies, to be fair, and writing gigs, but he does seem to be doing quite a few things for Aftershock now. This is a book for those probably outside of the UK and of a certain age who don't remember them. It's crafted to feel like an homage to the two main crime families from the 60s and 70s, or the 60s really, which was the more renowned ones, were the Krays and the Richardsons. So the Krays were the East End of London, famously, you know, there's been numerous movies made about them on there. And the Richardsons were the South London family. And in many respects, much longer running and more powerful. It also sort of mines pop culture for the go-tos of stuff from the 60s. Part of this story is set in the 60s and part of it is set much more recently. So in the backgrounds of stuff you get, for example, Jimi Hendrix. There's a scene drawn in Carnaby Street, and you can see Hendrix in the foreground. You also get a character later on who I showed you, that guy, this picture, didn't I, guys? Who is literally a one-to-one homage of the Ray Winston character in Sexy Beast.
Yeah,
I think he's even wearing the same things.
Yeah.
To an outsider who doesn't understand the sort of gang culture, the sort of street culture of, you know, London gangs tended to have knives and razor blades before, gangsters in America were shooting each other with machine guns. This is a bit more maybe like what you compare it to is the Montagues versus the Capulets in Romeo and Juliet, or West Side Story, or it is that sort of thing. In fact, the Romeo and Juliet also gets a name check at one point, because the daughter of the South London firm, who are called the Quins in this, I think, is seeing one of the dogs, who's this other gang, because they come from the Isle of Dogs, if you see what I mean, which is the East End. In reality, the sort of animosity between the two gangs is a really interesting story, and I think it was only slightly more short-lived because the Krays had a habit of getting banged up quite a lot, and going to prison, while the Richardsons had a much more longevity. They are all, even though it's the 60s, all the gangs are still that sharp-dressed looking people, black suits, white shirt, black, skinny black ties, compared to the rest of hippiedom that was going on. And that is something that's played on a bit in this comic, the sort of changing culture of the two, the sort of arty crowd and the sort of street crowd. I suppose it's something we see a bit here as well. So one of the gang is meeting the daughter of one of the Quins, and he has sex with her above the shops in this sort of seedy little flat. But the book does open with the dogs burying a body, like they do in Goodfellas, where they bury that body by the roadside.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to spoil it, but those bodies, we flash forward sort of 20 or 30 years, and those bodies come back to haunt them, which is interesting, and it ends on that happening. So this is just issue 1. I'm guessing, because it's an Aftershock series, it's probably going to be a mini-series that might lead into another mini-series, but at the moment I think it's a 6-issue mini-series, I think. And there's a big hint that it's something more than a gangster story, because I don't want to spoil it, because of the nature of how these bodies come back to haunt them. There's a little bit of detail that you have to actually read the book very closely to figure out. And you think, oh, okay, there's something more than just this Long Good Friday, the Krays, Brighton Rock thing going on, The art's okay. I'll be honest and say I had a real trouble figuring out who was who in it. I think I showed you it, didn't I? Because they're all the gangsters of the time in London all had slick back hair and wore the same clothes. None of them had beards and moustaches, and they all looked the same. So even in the first two or three pages, I was thinking, well, who's that in that panel? Is that the same one in the next panel? It honestly was a bit confusing for me. Some of the details are right. I know the artist. I think he is South American. I'm going to quickly look up while we're talking. Brazilian. Yeah, he's Brazilian, the artist. So he's not a Londoner. He's not someone probably who was in London at the time of this happening. So some of the details are right. So, for example, the right kind of phones are on tables, the right kind of radiators, that sort of thing. But some of the other stuff isn't right. So we didn't have poles in stripper pubs. They just used to do a turn on the pool table or something. The whole sort of pole dancing thing was much, much later. There's a few things like that. Some of the shop signs look like they've been put in digitally by the letterer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And some of them aren't written particularly readably. I'd like to point out that Vietnam is one word for one of the signs. But I'm going to say I am going to recommend it because I think Milligan knows what he's doing, and this is going somewhere and will surprise us. It's a specific subgenre that I'm a fan of. I can only think if we had someone like Brendan McCarthy on this book, it would be cranked up. It would just be this sort of visual, complicated mood, full of mood and stuff like that. But it's very by the numbers, this art-wise. But yeah, it's good. It's following stories that I really enjoy in other mediums. So I'm going to say it's like a solid 6 or 7 out of 10 at the moment. But I'm expecting it to get better. It may be because of the way that you break up issues these days. It may read better in a trade because this this hint at the end of the first issue may be something that will come up later. But it's a strong idea. You know, it's really nice. And I think Milligan's been talking about how he's been waiting to try and tell this kind of story for a while. And yeah, it may not be something that is immediately, because it's quite iconic. The Krays are quite iconic to us, aren't they? All you've got to do is see the outline of them sometimes on a T-shirt sold in Camden, and you know who they are, don't you? You know, Ronnie and Reggie. It may not be the same for American audiences and people from other countries, but yeah, it's good. I like the fact that the image on the front of the Dogs of London cover, I think this is the Dave Johnson one, is a bloke in a suit, but he's got the head of a Doberman. And he's covered in blood, and I kind of think that's cool.
Great cover, really good
very
cover.
Good. Yeah. So that's by Aftershock, issue 1. It came out this week, so go and get a copy. There you go, that's my one.
Nice
one, yeah.
There you go,
I'm going to check that one
folks.
out. I like that one.
And it's a very striking cover. You can't miss that one. That was almost one of the picks for last week's comic cover.
It was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course.
Yes, and thank you to everyone that's been listening to our recent shows, and to all you lovely people who are new listeners. Well, I always want to apologise straight away. I don't know why. But thank you for all the continued support. We really appreciate it, and we're going to keep churning out probably nonsensical chat and some insightful comics conversation and interviews at the same time. So, and if there's anything that you want us to talk about on upcoming shows, there's several different ways you can get in touch with us. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. You can join us on Twitter @TheAwesomePod, where we'll be posting episodes, retweeting. If you've got something positive and nice to say about comics, we'll retweet it.
Yeah.
If you do the Book of Faces, go to facebook.com/awesomecomicspodcast. Also, the community group Awesome Comics Talk on Facebook is a wonderful place for people of all walks to talk about comics, as is the Awesome Comics Podcast Slack group.
We had 6 new people this week.
Yeah.
Really growing.
Oh, great, yeah.
Yeah, so a great community of people that just want to talk about comics without any sort of hard selling. It's just for the love of the medium. That's what it's all about. And there's loads of different channels and discussions going on there.
It's a crowdfunding channel, which I know we've been we don't really like just pure posting stuff and leaving. But if you're prepared to take part in the conversation on there, on the Slack, then you are, there is a crowdfunding channel which people will discuss your project with.
Yeah.
You know, that's useful for that.
Yeah.
And if you're an active member of the community, that's encouraged. Put up a link to a project you're on.
Yeah. Because we all just want to discover comics. And that's probably why you, lovely listener, want to as well, which is why you listen to us on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe and leave a review. Algorithms and all that jazz will help get the word out about this show to other people who like comics and maybe won't mind listening to us waffle on about nonsense, especially when it comes to the last 10 minutes of the show when it's just chaos. It's absolute chaos. We're on other networks like Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife. What other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on Pod. This comic should be £3, not fucking 15.
Oh God! Don't start me, girlfriend. Don't start me. Don't trigger me. But this
can also give Dez his link out again as well for his
please do. Please do.
Go and get Sez Dez Volume 1. It's A4. It's absolutely full of stuff. Every page is a joy. All you got to do is get hold of him on PayPal. It's Dez Skinn, the number 1 @yahoo.co.uk, and make sure you include enough postage so he can send it back. Send you a copy and he'll sign it and everything. I think he writes Champion in it, which he did in mine. So go and get a copy. It is genuinely a really great, fun read.
Again. How much copies?
I can't remember off the top of my head. That's bad, isn't it? But they're very reasonable. They're not expensive or anything.
Yeah.
It's like a Perfect Bound magazine size, but with probably more pages than your general magazine. But yes, it's a great little read.
Amazing. Yeah. Get on it, people. And thank you, Dez, again for joining us for Volume 1. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And we had a lot of fun just sitting back and just being absolutely schooled. But while we drink our Horlicks and go to sleep happy, thinking about all the comics that we talked about tonight, where can people find us online, etc.? Tony?
Neveronanything.com.
Lovely. Dan?
You can find me, you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com, and you can support me on my Patreon account, which is patreon.com/VanguardComic.
Nice.
Come check me out on there. Also, I'm going to be popping up on another podcast soon.
Oh yeah.
I went Traitor and went on Kurt's
Judas. No.
two geeks talking. So when that goes live, I'll post it up. Not on my best. I recorded it at midnight till 1.
Oh yeah, you messaged me saying "fuck me." It's midnight.
Yeah.
Dan's not used
Classic.
to. He's not used to being awake when the sun goes down. So
No, I'm an early bird, man. I'm fucking down at gym
Me too.
at 6
Yeah.
a.m.
yeah.
Okay,
All right,
by the
don't
time
sh-
midnight rolls down, I'm fucked.
Such an old man.
Yeah.
But you can find me on social media, etc. at Jester Diablo. Thank you again for listening. Stay tuned for more awesomeness to come. And from Dan, Tony, and myself, have a brilliant week. Read loads of comics. Make lots of comics. Just make a comic this week. Why not? In one week, or at least just read something you really enjoy, and tell someone else about it, because that's how comics. That's how they will survive, basically.
Yeah. we got to keep comics going when they're kind of at their low point.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, and there's no lower point than us. So have a great week, everyone. And as always, guys, what should our lovely listeners do?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
There you go. Bye, everyone.
Bye.